He adopted a dying dog to give him one final week. That week turned into a movement and a legacy that will outlive them both. The shelter was quiet that morning, a rare break from the usual chaos of barking dogs and bustling staff. The sky was gray, casting a dull silver hue across the cracked concrete floor. In the farthest corner of the shelter, hidden behind 3 rows of kennels, lay a dog that had been given up on long before his body had started giving out. His name was Shadow, not because he was fast or elusive, but because he blended into the background. A senior black Labrador mix with cloudy eyes, patchy fur, and a thin frame. He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He just existed. Most people who walked through the shelter didn't even notice him. Those who did turned away. No one wanted to take home a dog that looked like death was already claiming him. "Just a few more days," whispered Carla, the shelter supervisor, as she closed his file one morning. "He's not in pain, just tired. It's time." The staff had grown, attached to Shadow. But years of working in the shelter hardened them to the heartbreak. They had no space, no adopters interested, and no medical funds left. The decision had been made. Shadow would be put down on Friday. It was Wednesday. Miles away, in a quiet suburban home, a man named David Whitaker stared at his ceiling. He hadn't slept well in months. A former firefighter in his early 40s, David was a man built on action, on saving lives. But after a tragic accident during a rescue mission claimed his partner's life and left David with burn scars on his back and shoulder, he walked away from it all. PTSD, guilt, loneliness. They clung to him like wet clothes. The only companion he had was silence, and it wasn't a friendly one. That morning, he opened his laptop and typed something into the search bar. "Senior dogs for adoption near me." It wasn't a spontaneous decision. David had thought about it for weeks. He'd grown up with dogs. His family dog, Baxter, had been by his side from middle school until his early 20s. Losing him had felt like losing a sibling. He didn't want a puppy. He didn't want Instagram cute. He wanted something real, something broken, like him. When David walked into Brookstone Animal Rescue, Carla greeted him with cautious hope. "You're looking to adopt?" she asked. David nodded, scanning the room full of yipping terriers and pacing shepherds. "I'm looking for the dog no one else wants." That sentence alone made Carla pause. "Come with me," she said. She led him through the maze of kennels, past the louder dogs and the ones eagerly pressing their noses to the bars, and stopped in front of a kennel with a "Do Not Disturb" sign. Inside lay Shadow, his breathing slow, eyes half-lidded, barely reacting. Carla spoke quietly. "His name is Shadow. He's about 13, heart condition, liver issues, partially blind, can barely walk. He doesn't have much time." David knelt, peering through the bars. Shadow opened one eye and looked at him, not with excitement, but with quiet, almost human resignation. "He's dying," Carla said softly. David didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he stood. "I'll take him." "Wait. What?" The staff gathered as Carla repeated what she'd just heard. David was filling out the paperwork, unwavering. "You understand he might not even make it a week, right?" Carla asked again. David nodded. All the more reason to make that week count. They processed the adoption with a mix of confusion and cautious admiration. They waived the adoption fee. Shadow was lifted gently onto a soft dog bed and placed in David's back seat. For the first time in months, the old dog was leaving the shelter. The ride home was silent. Shadow didn't move, didn't lift his head. David kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half worried the dog had already passed. But then he saw it, just a flicker. Shadow's tail wagged once. David's home wasn't grand, but it was quiet, peaceful. The living room had a large fireplace, and the kitchen smelled of fresh bread and herbs. He set Shadow down in a corner, bed filled with soft blankets, and placed a bowl of warm chicken broth nearby. The dog didn't eat at first, just stared. David sat across from him on the floor, arms resting on his knees. "You and me, pal," he said. "We're not done yet." "That night," Shadow whimpered in his sleep. David lay awake on the couch, listening. Around 3 a.m., he heard the dog's weak paws shuffle toward him. He opened his eyes, and Shadow, with trembling effort, placed his head on David's hand. By Friday, the day Shadow was supposed to be euthanized, something had changed. The dog had eaten 3 full meals. He followed David slowly from room to room. His tail wagged more often, and he even barked once, a raspy, broken sound that startled them both. David scheduled a visit with a local vet, Dr. Lena Marsh, a former classmate of his sister. She'd treated rescue dogs for over a decade. Shadow was examined gently. Dr. Marsh's face was unreadable as she listened to his heart. "He's sicker than most, I see," she admitted. "But he doesn't want to give up," David asked. If it was possible for Shadow to live longer with the right care. Lena paused. "It's unlikely, but not impossible." David smiled. "That's enough for me." As the days passed, a transformation began, slow but undeniable. Shadow's eyes grew brighter, his steps were steadier. He developed a habit of sitting beside David while he read in the evenings, his head resting on the man's foot. Every small victory felt like a miracle. One afternoon, David took Shadow outside. The old dog sniffed the wind, lifted his head to the sun, and for the first time in years, ran. Not far. Not fast, but enough to make David laugh out loud. "You've got more in you, don't you, boy?" Shadow barked in response. It wasn't just a second chance, it was a resurrection. One rainy night, as thunder rumbled through the sky, there was a knock on David's front door. He wasn't expecting anyone. He opened it to find a woman, middle-aged, soaking wet, clutching a folder. Her eyes landed on Shadow, who had come to the door beside David. "That's him," she whispered. "Oh my God, that's Buddy!" David blinked. "Buddy?" The woman's voice trembled. "I'm his original owner." David stared at the woman in confusion. "You know this dog?" he asked, keeping a protective hand on Shadow's side. The woman nodded, tears already streaming down her cheeks. She knelt to her knees and called softly, "Buddy? Is that you, baby?" To David's surprise, Shadow, Buddy, took a few hesitant steps forward. He sniffed the air, then moved closer, slowly, like he was walking through a dream. His tail gave a cautious wag. The woman burst into sobs. David stood back, unsure whether to feel angry, confused, or just protective. "Come in," he finally said. She stepped inside, leaving wet footprints across the hardwood floor, and David handed her a towel. She sat shakily on the couch as Shadow laid his head in her lap. "I need you to tell me everything," David said. "My name is Catherine Blake," she began, clutching the folder to her chest. "And that dog was mine for almost 11 years. She opened the folder and pulled out photos, hundreds of them. Buddy as a puppy, in the backyard, playing with children, sleeping on couches, in Halloween costumes. He was our family's heart," she said, smiling through tears. "My husband, 2 daughters, and I adopted him from a rescue when he was just 3 months old. He was always so gentle, so protective. My youngest used to sleep with him like a pillow." She turned the page in an album. There were medical records, too. A history of vaccines, vet visits, even a microchip registration. But 5 years ago, we lost everything. My husband died in a car crash. I lost my job. We couldn't afford the house. I had to move in with my sister. She had no pets allowed. Catherine's voice cracked. "I found a family who promised to care for him. They seemed kind, stable. They sent me pictures for the first few months. But then they stopped. When I followed up, their number had changed. I called shelters, rescues. No one had heard of a black lab named Buddy. David was quiet, absorbing the weight of what she was saying. I never stopped looking, she said. Last week I saw a photo online. Someone at the shelter had posted it. They said he had been adopted by a man named David Whitaker. I searched for your name, and here I am. David felt a strange tangle of emotions, relief that Buddy had once been loved, anger that someone had abandoned him, and confusion over what this meant now. He looked down at Shadow, Buddy, who seemed to understand none of this. He simply laid at Catherine's feet, eyes closed, tail occasionally thumping. You said someone gave him away? David asked. Yes, she whispered. I trusted the wrong people, and he paid for it. David considered his next question carefully. Are you here to take him back? Catherine looked up, startled. No, I would love to, but I'm not in a position. I live in a small apartment. I work nights. I wanted to know he was safe, that he was loved. David exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. He is, he said. He absolutely is. Over the next hour, they talked. Catherine showed David more photos, telling stories of Buddy's puppy mischief, how he once chewed through a whole couch, cushion, or how he used to bark at the doorbell every time the doorbell rang on TV. David chuckled. He still does that. Catherine laughed too, tears still in her eyes. You've done more for him than I could ever thank you for, she said. He looks healthier than he did in those shelter photos. David nodded. He's a fighter. I didn't think he'd last the week. Now he follows me around like my shadow. Fitting name, Catherine said softly. That night, she said goodbye at the door, kissing Buddy gently on the head. You're in good hands now, she whispered. As David closed the door, he glanced down at the old dog who had already curled up on the rug by the fireplace. I guess you had a whole life before me, he murmured, but you're home now. Buddy wagged his tail once, then drifted into sleep. From that night forward, something in Buddy shifted again. He seemed more alert, more present, as if the visit had stirred old memories back to life. He ate with more enthusiasm, walked a little, longer on his daily outings, and even tried to jump onto the couch, though he failed and needed a boost. David found a renewed sense of purpose, too. He wasn't just caring for a dying dog anymore, he was helping a survivor heal. He began journaling every night. Day 17. Buddy actually chased a squirrel today. He didn't catch it, but he tried. He also started recording short videos. Buddy, playing with a ball, rolling on his back in the yard, wagging his tail like crazy when David came home from the store. He posted one clip to a local dog group on social media with a caption, "Adopted a dying dog 3 weeks ago. He's teaching me how to live again." The video went viral. Within 24 hours, the video had 80,000 views. Messages flooded David's inbox, people asking about Buddy, sharing stories of their own senior dogs, offering to send treats or supplies. Some even said the video inspired them to adopt. Then came a message from a local news station. We'd love to do a story about your journey with Buddy. David hesitated. He hadn't intended to make their story public, but if Buddy's comeback could help other dogs like him, he agreed. When the camera crew arrived, Buddy trotted toward them on his wobbly legs, tail wagging hard enough to knock over a decorative lamp. The reporter, Sarah Kwan, knelt beside him. Is this the star of the show? David laughed. He's definitely the miracle. The interview covered everything: how David found him, how Buddy had been near death, how a surprise reunion revealed the truth of his past. And what would you say he's taught you? Sarah asked. David looked into the camera. That broken doesn't mean hopeless. That love doesn't expire with age. And that healing, it goes both ways. The piece aired 2 days later and was viewed over 1.2 million times in the first week. Soon after, a viewer named Ellie sent a message. "I run a dog hospice nonprofit. We do bucket list adventures for senior dogs. Would you and Buddy be interested?" David smiled. You better believe it. They created a list: ride in a convertible, eat a steak dinner, swim in a lake, go to the beach, ride in a fire truck, get a professional doggy massage, be best dog at a wedding. Get 10,000 belly rubs. Buddy's bucket list became a project that gave them purpose and joy, and just as the adventures began. One morning, David woke up to find Buddy standing at the back door whining softly. That was unusual. He let him out, and Buddy walked in slow, stumbling circles before lying down in the grass. David rushed to his side. Buddy's breathing was labored. He wasn't responding to David's voice. The vet came immediately. She examined him and said the words David had been dreading. "He's in heart failure. We need to get him to the clinic now." David's heart pounded. "No, not yet. He's not ready. We still have so much to do." But fate had other plans. David's hands trembled as he sped down the slick streets, headlights slicing through the gray morning mist. Buddy, his once nearly lifeless shelter dog, now family, lay eerily still in the back seat. "Stay with me, boy," David muttered, eyes darting to the rearview mirror. Every bump in the road made Buddy whimper. His breathing was shallow, lips quivering with each slow inhale. David's heart clenched. They arrived at the vet clinic just after 7 a.m. Dr. Samantha Ross, David's go-to vet, was already waiting at the door, having responded to his frantic early morning call. Two techs helped lift Buddy onto a gurney. "We'll do everything we can," she said as the doors swung closed behind them. David was left in the waiting room, soaked, shaking, and silent. 30 agonizing minutes later, Dr. Ross emerged. "His heart's failing faster than expected," she said. "The scan shows significant cardiomyopathy. His heart muscle's too weak to function efficiently." "But," she paused, "he's fighting." David nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "We've given him oxygen and a dose of furosemide to clear fluid from his lungs. He's stabilizing, but this isn't a cure. It's a delay." "How long?" David whispered. Dr. Ross gave a small, sad smile. "Could be a few weeks, maybe a couple of months. It depends." "On what?" "On love, on rest, and on what you do with the time left." Later that afternoon, David brought Buddy home. He carried him gently from the car to the house, where the living room had been transformed into a soft haven. Pillows, blankets, plush rugs. Buddy slept for hours. David sat beside him the entire time, one hand always resting on his fur, as if touch alone could keep him alive. That night, David didn't journal. He just whispered into the quiet, "You're not going anywhere. Not yet." The next morning, David woke to over 200 new messages. After the local news story and the viral video, people had followed Buddy's journey closely. Now, they were sending encouragement, prayers, and offers of help. One message stood out. "Hi, David. I'm an animal cardiologist. I saw your story. I believe we can help Buddy live more comfortably, and possibly longer. I'm offering free consultation and treatment. Please contact me." Dr. Lila Mendel, a renowned veterinary cardiologist from 3 cities over, met with David and Buddy via Zoom that afternoon. She studied the reports and videos. "He's a fighter," she said. "With a regimen of medication, diet, and low-stress living, we can improve his quality of life. I won't promise miracles, but I will promise we won't give up." David's eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm in." Buddy's life became a carefully timed balance of rest and activity. He now received heart medications 3 times daily, low-sodium meals tailored to his condition, light exercise, usually a short walk to the park bench, and back massage therapy once a week, gifted by a supporter, Daily video calls from Catherine, his previous owner, who read him stories and showed him his old toys. David also installed a doggy stroller. An online donation had covered the cost. With it, he took Buddy through the neighborhood, into pet stores, and down to the beach. Wherever they went, people recognized them. "That's Buddy from the videos," some cried. Others knelt to pet him. Someone even gave him a birthday cake, shaped like a bone. "He's not just my dog anymore," David told a friend. "He's everyone's hope." One evening, while sorting mail, David found a handwritten envelope with no return address. Inside was a letter. "Dear David, I don't know you, but I know your story. I lost my dog to heart failure 6 months ago. Watching you and Buddy has brought me healing I didn't think possible. I didn't have the strength to say goodbye properly, but you gave Buddy that strength every day. Thank you for showing the world what love looks like. Enclosed is a small token. Use it however Buddy needs. Forever grateful." A friend inside was a check for $10,000. David stared at it in disbelief. With trembling hands, he pressed Buddy's paw against the letter and whispered, "Look at what you're doing, old man." With the donation, David and Buddy launched a campaign called Second Tales, a project helping senior shelter dogs get medical care, beds, and end-of-life adventures. Their first mission? Complete Buddy's bucket list. Each weekend was dedicated to a dream. A fire truck ride arranged by the local station, where Buddy wore a tiny helmet and Bark Chief badge. A beach day complete with dog-safe ice cream and a game of fetch-in. The surf. A convertible ride down the coast, ears flapping in the breeze, eyes closed in bliss. A wedding they were invited to, where Buddy served as honorary best dog and stole the show when he barked during the vows. David documented it all. The photos were put into a calendar that raised over $30,000 for other dogs like Buddy. It was during one of these joyful days, while they picnicked on a lakeside dock, that David noticed something peculiar. Buddy was staring at the water. Not just looking, staring, focused, still. "What you see, pal?" Buddy turned his head slowly toward David and gave a single soft bark. Then something extraordinary happened. David stood and watched, stunned, as Buddy, with unsteady legs, walked to the edge of the dock and slowly stepped into the water. He paddled once, twice, then floated. David rushed forward, ready to jump in, but paused. Buddy's head was up. His legs moved in slow rhythm. He wasn't in danger. He was swimming. Neighbors watching from shore clapped. One man even whistled. When Buddy returned to land, soaking wet and exhausted, David wrapped him in a towel and kissed his snout. "You're full of surprises," he whispered. That night, David sat on the porch. Buddy curled at his feet beneath a blanket. He looked up at the stars. "If we only have weeks, let's make them count," he said. Buddy let out a sleepy sigh. David reached for his phone and opened a new note. Final wish, take Buddy to the mountains. It was something he hadn't done yet, something Catherine had once mentioned Buddy loved when he was young, a mountain trail, pine air, birds chirping in the silence. It was time. The next morning, David's phone rang. "David?" It was Catherine. "I've been watching your posts. I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," David said. There was a pause. "I'd like to come with you, for his last wish. I think he'd want that." David smiled. "I'd be honored." Catherine stepped out of the rental car slowly, her eyes scanning the frosted pine trees before settling on the SUV. Her breath caught when she saw Buddy's white muzzle poke out from beneath a flannel blanket in the back seat. He didn't bark. He didn't jump, but his tail thumped softly. Catherine dropped to her knees. "Oh, my sweet boy." Her voice cracked as she reached for him. Buddy pressed his head gently against her arm, the familiar scent unlocking 1,000 memories in an instant. David gave them space, stepping back to the gravel edge of the road. He watched quietly, heart tight with emotion. Catherine looked up at him finally, tears in her eyes. "You kept him alive?" she whispered. David shook his head. "No, he did that himself. I just gave him a reason." They made their way up to the old cabin trail, a small hiking route just off Blue Ridge Highway. It wasn't steep, but it wove through thickets of pine and brush that held the secrets of years gone by. David had prepared carefully. Buddy sat in his stroller, wrapped in a thermal blanket, with a small heating pad tucked below. A GoPro clipped. To the handlebar captured the ride. David wanted to save every moment. The air was biting, but dry and fresh. Birds chirped somewhere high above, hidden in the trees. With each rotation of the stroller's wheels, pine needles crunched softly. Beneath them. "He loved this place," Catherine said, walking alongside David. "We used to come up here before the cancer, every October." David nodded. "You can tell. He keeps trying to sit up and look around." They reached a clearing with a flat, rocky overlook. The view was breathtaking. The valley stretched out in shades of green and brown, with veins of golden-leaved trees threading through. Fog clung to the base of the hills like a silk scarf. David stopped the stroller. Buddy sniffed the air, then slowly raised his head, his cloudy eyes wide with wonder. And then he howled. Soft, low, and long. Catherine gasped. He hasn't howled in years. They set up a small campfire at a designated site just off the trail. It was legal, monitored, and safe. David had brought collapsible chairs, a thermos of hot chocolate, and a travel bed for Buddy. As the fire crackled and the sun dipped behind the trees, the three of them sat in a ring of quiet warmth. Catherine sipped from her cup. "I wanted to say thank you in person, but I also wanted to ask your forgiveness." David looked over. "For what?" "I didn't mean to abandon him. I know it might have seemed like that. But the cancer treatments, the debt, I thought I was dying. I didn't want him to watch me go." David was quiet. "I understand," he said at last. "You thought you were protecting him." She nodded. "I never thought anyone would actually adopt him. And when I saw your video, I was ashamed at first. And then I was overwhelmed. Because he was happy again." David's voice softened. "He still has so much love to give. He just needed someone to believe in him." Catherine wiped her eyes. "And you did." That night, they stayed in a nearby rental cabin, modest, warm, nestled deep in the woods. Buddy slept between them in front of the stone fireplace, the flames casting slow shadows along the walls. David couldn't sleep. At around 2 a.m., he sat by the fire sipping cold tea, staring at the embers. Then he heard it, a soft, low growl. He turned. Buddy was dreaming, legs twitching, mouth moving silently. Then he whimpered. David moved closer, gently rubbing his back. "Shh. It's okay. I'm here." Suddenly, Buddy's eyes opened. They weren't clouded in that moment. They were clear, bright, sharp. He locked eyes with David, and something passed between them. Not fear. Not confusion, a kind of recognition, a final understanding. And then, just as quickly, his eyes closed again. David and Catherine awoke to sunlight flooding the cabin, and to the smell of something strange. Pancakes? They walked outside and saw a group of hikers nearby cooking breakfast on a portable griddle. One of them, a young woman, recognized them. "Are you Buddy's dad? From the rescue video?" David chuckled. "Yeah, that's us. The hikers came over with food, coffee, and even a small plate of scrambled eggs for Buddy. We've been following your story. It's incredible. He inspired my sister to adopt an old Labrador from a shelter." Another man added, "I lost my dog last year. Watching you two made me believe in happy endings again." Buddy, now awake and sitting upright in the stroller, licked the woman's hand. Everyone clapped. Later that day, they hiked a little further, this time on foot. Buddy insisted on walking. Slowly, deliberately, one paw at a time, he trudged up. A narrow dirt path flanked by ferns and moss. David kept a hand under his belly. Catherine walked ahead, coaxing him gently. They reached a bench carved from a fallen log. Buddy hopped up, well, David helped, and lay down across it. Then David noticed the carving in the wood. Buddy and Catherine. 2016. Catherine gasped. I forgot about this. Tears welled up again. Looks like we made it back, David said quietly. That evening, back at the cabin, Buddy was quieter than usual. He didn't eat dinner. He didn't wag his tail. He just lay by the fire, breathing, softly, eyes half closed. David felt a pang in his chest. Catherine noticed too. I think he used the last of his strength for today. David knelt beside him. Don't go yet, Buddy. Not tonight. Buddy licked his hand, a single soft gesture, and then he closed his eyes. That night, a storm rolled over the mountains. Winds howled. Rain slammed against the roof. The power flickered. David sat awake, wrapped in a blanket, watching Buddy breathe. Each breath was a little shallower, each exhale a little slower. At 4:12 a.m., Buddy opened his eyes again. He looked from David to Catherine, and then up at the ceiling. His tail thumped once, and then he closed his eyes for the last time. The room was silent, except for the sound of rain on the cabin roof. At sunrise, they wrapped Buddy in the blanket he'd loved so much and brought him outside. The rain had stopped. Mist clung to the forest. They walked in silence to the overlook, the same place he had howled the day before. There, they laid him gently beneath the largest pine tree. David dug with his hands while Catherine read from a note she had written long ago. May you run where pain can't follow. May you rest where time can't fade. You gave more love than most hearts can hold, and took none of it to the grave. When the earth was replaced, they placed his collar atop the stone. Back in the city, the world mourned with them. The video of Buddy's final adventure went viral within hours. Celebrities reposted it. Animal shelters received thousands in donations. David renamed his nonprofit Buddy's Last Walk Foundation. Its mission? To grant final wishes to senior shelter dogs across the country. The first dog they rescued? A 12-year-old mutt named Grace, scheduled to be euthanized in 3 days. She now slept in David's living room, wrapped in Buddy's old blanket. The apartment felt different. Not just empty, hollow. David walked in and stood at the doorway. Buddy's blanket still lay on the couch, his bowl untouched in the kitchen. The faint smell of pine from the cabin still clung to David's jacket. For the first time in months, there was no padding of soft paws behind him, no tail thumps against the side of the couch. Just silence. He knelt beside Buddy's bed and picked up the worn, squeaky fox toy, the one Buddy had carried to bed each night. He held it close, and something inside him cracked. He wept and wept. When he finally managed to open his laptop later that day, his inbox had over 2,000 unread emails, from shelters, from dog lovers, from families, from complete strangers across the world. Subject lines: Buddy changed my life. Thank you for showing me real love. Can you help our dog find a home before it's too late? I have cancer, and a dog like Buddy. Please call me. His social media pages had exploded. Buddy's final howl on the mountain had been viewed 22 million times in 3 days, the post David made with the words, "He made it to the top." And so did we. Had become a slogan. Celebrities reposted it. News outlets wanted interviews. Animal shelters asked to partner with him. But amid the sudden fame, David sat quietly in his living room, staring at the empty spot where Buddy used to sleep. That evening there was a knock at the door. It was Catherine. She held something in her arms. A bundle wrapped in brown paper and twine. "I wanted you to have this," she said, eyes puffy. Inside was a handmade photo album, title, Buddy's Life, the Goodest Boy. Each page was a mix of old photos and new ones. Buddy with Catherine as a puppy, Buddy in the shelter, Buddy in David's, arms after adoption, Buddy in the mountains. One page held a Polaroid of Buddy on the overlook, scarf fluttering in the wind, eyes closed. A single sentence was handwritten beneath it. He found his way home. David choked back emotion. This is everything." Catherine sat beside him. "I was thinking," she said, "maybe it's not over." David looked over. "I mean," she continued, "what if we helped the next one, and the one after that?" He smiled weakly. "That's what I was just thinking, too." 1 week later, Buddy's Last Walk Foundation launched online. Its mission? To find senior shelter dogs in their final days and give them a last adventure, a final wish, or simply love in a home before they passed. The website crashed from high traffic on day 1. Within 48 hours, they'd raised over $60,000. Emails poured in from shelter workers. "This 14-year-old boxer has 3 days left. His name is Moose. We have a blind pit bull named Daisy, abandoned last year. Can you help? Rusty's been here 9 years, never adopted. Now he has tumors." David and Catherine built a small team, 2 volunteers, 1 veterinarian on call, and a digital media intern named Leo who had followed Buddy's story from the beginning. They worked out of David's apartment. The couch became a dog bed zone. The kitchen table became a planning hub, and in every corner, there were framed photos of Buddy. Her name was Grace, a 12-year-old black lab with cloudy eyes and hips that wobbled. She'd been scheduled for euthanasia. David arrived at the shelter just 2 hours before the appointment. Grace lay curled in the corner of the kennel, barely lifting her head when he entered. He opened the door, sat beside her, and placed Buddy's old scarf around her neck. "You ready to go home?" he whispered. Her tail wagged, once slow, but David carried her out in his arms. Outside, 2 news crews waited. Catherine had brought a sign. "Grace gets her walk." The photo of David holding Grace, wrapped in Buddy's scarf, went viral within hours. Grace got a steak dinner, a spa bath, a custom wheelchair for support, a photo shoot in a sunflower field. By day's end, she was snuggled up in Buddy's old bed, snoring peacefully. That night, David posted, "Today we gave Grace the love she'd waited 12 years to feel. She's home now. Buddy's home is still full of purpose." 3 days later, an envelope arrived at the foundation's P.O. box. It was heavy. Inside was a handwritten letter and a check for $500,000 from an anonymous donor memo. For the goodest work, inspired by the goodest boy. David stared at it, stunned. There was no name, no return address, just a short message scrawled on the back of the check. Buddy walked once for all of them. Now, let them walk for him. They cried. All of them. The donation changed everything. They rented an office space, hired 2 more staff, bought a rescue van, and within a month, rescued 17 more dogs, each one old, unwanted, and counting down their final days. Now each one had a name, each one had a story, each one had a walk. 1 month later, David returned alone to the Blue Ridge Mountains. He carried with him a wooden sign he had carved himself. At the base of the old pine tree where Buddy was buried, he hammered the sign into the ground. It read, "Here lies Buddy. He was nobody's first choice, but he was everyone's last light. Run forever. Good boy. Your walk lives on." David sat for hours, staring at the valley. He placed a new toy, a squeaky fox, just like the old one, beside the grave. And as the wind picked up and pine needles danced around him, he could almost hear it. That soft, familiar howl carried on the breeze. Back home, a letter was waiting. It was from a young girl in hospice care. She wrote, I watched Buddy's story every night. I'm 11, and I'm not going to make it to Christmas. But my dog, Pickles, is still alive. I worry what will happen to him when I go. Can you promise me he won't end up in a cage? David cried as he read it. The foundation sprang into action. They found Pickles a home within 2 days, with a retired vet tech who had just lost her own senior dog. Pickles would be loved for the rest of his days. And the girl? She sent back a voice message, a whisper, full of peace. Thank you for keeping my promise. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, handwritten on yellowed paper, sealed with a rubber band. Catherine found it in the mail stack, wedged between veterinary bills and foundation donation receipts. It read, Dear Buddy's Last Walk Foundation, I don't know if you'll get this, but we're down to our last bags of kibble. Our county budget's been cut, volunteers have stopped coming, and the roof leaks. When it rains, we've got 47 dogs, most of them old, all of them unwanted. Please, don't let them die here. Marla, shelter director, Greenfield County. Attached was a grainy photo of a hound dog lying on a torn blanket under a flickering fluorescent light. David stared at it for a long time, then said, We're going. Greenfield County was a 3-hour drive away, tucked in the hills where cell service faded and the roads wound like question marks. David and Catherine packed the van with supplies, blankets, dog food, first aid kits, and a generator just in case. Leo filmed every moment. In the back seat sat Grace, now stronger with medication and supplements. Though her steps were slower, her eyes sparkled with new life. She wore Buddy's scarf proudly, her badge of honor. As they drove, David shared a quiet thought. I keep thinking, if Buddy hadn't gotten sick, none of this would have started. Catherine nodded. He didn't die, he multiplied. Greenfield County Shelter wasn't a place for happy endings. It was a cement bunker with rusted fencing and a foul smell of mildew and waste. Some kennels had no bedding, others had broken water bowls. But worst of all, silence. No barking, no wagging tails, just quiet acceptance. The dogs were old, many were sick. Some were blind, others too arthritic to stand. Marla, a kind-faced woman in her 60s, greeted them at the door with tears already streaming. I didn't think anyone would come, she whispered. David took her hand. We're here now. The next 48 hours became a whirlwind. David and Catherine inspected every dog. Leo documented conditions. They cataloged 12 dogs needing immediate vet care, 6 dogs with terminal diagnoses, completely blind with 3 legs, a golden retriever named Charlie who hadn't stood up in 3 days. They called in reinforcements, local volunteers, partner, shelters, and a mobile vet unit funded by donations. They cleaned, painted, replaced bedding. David gave baths to matted dogs with bare patches of skin. Catherine hand-fed those too weak to eat. And when night fell, they played soft classical music over speakers. For the first time in months, the shelter didn't smell like despair. It smelled like hope. Charlie, the golden retriever, had been in the shelter for 7 years. He hadn't been touched by a human in almost 300 days. David sat beside him, just like he had with Buddy the first night. He offered a soft treat and waited. No response. Then he lay down and whispered, You don't have to trust me. I'm just here. After an hour, Charlie lifted his head, then placed it on David's lap, and slept. The next morning, Charlie stood. Up for the first time in a week. Leo caught it on camera. The video was posted with the caption, They always want to live. They just need someone to give them a reason. It got 12 million views in 24 hours. With the funding surge from the viral video, the foundation made a bold decision. They bought the Greenfield Shelter. It would become the Buddy House, a dedicated sanctuary for senior and hospice dogs. Renovations began immediately. Heated floors, open kennels with couches and beds, 24-hour vet support, a sunset garden for end-of-life walks, volunteer rooms for guests who wanted to sit with dogs in their final days, David said during the announcement. They're not broken. They're not burdens. They're just waiting for someone to see them. Max was a black German shepherd with arthritis and a mass in his stomach. Vets gave him 2 weeks, maybe 3. Catherine offered to foster him for his final days. Max came, home wearing a red bandana and carrying a stuffed giraffe. On his second night, he stood by the front door at sunset and stared out. Catherine leashed him and walked slowly down the hill. At the base of the trail, Max sat down and looked up at her and smiled. He passed in his sleep that night. They buried him in the sunset garden with his giraffe. Catherine wrote in her journal, "Max didn't die alone. He died in love. That changes everything." Soon, shelters from other counties reached out. "Can you take in a 17-year-old Chihuahua named Beans? We have a hospice collie with cancer. Her name is Winnie. Please help this husky. He's deaf and blind. We're calling him Ghost." One by one, they came, and one by one, they were loved. Every dog received a name, a story, and a final chapter written in warmth. Leo made a weekly series titled Their Last Walks. The world couldn't stop watching. One afternoon, David received a letter unlike any other. It was from a man named Harold, living in a cabin 2 hours into the Appalachians. It read, "I saw Buddy's story. I'm 83. Lost my wife 2 years ago. Got 1 dog left. His name's Bones. He's 16, and we walk the ridge every day. He's slowing down. I can't carry him much longer. Thought maybe he could have a buddy walk too." David and Catherine drove up the next morning. Harold stood on the porch holding Bones, a gray-faced Labrador with wise eyes and a limp. David shook his hand. "I came to carry him," he said. Together, the 3 of them climbed the ridge and the top. Bones looked out at the sky, the mountains, and the wind in the trees. Then nestled in David's lap and fell asleep. He never woke up. Harold didn't cry. He just placed his hat over his heart and whispered, "Good walk, old boy." They buried Bones beside Harold's wife in the family plot. Within 6 months, Buddy's Last Walk Foundation had been featured on 60 Minutes, CNN, and The Ellen Show. Schools used Buddy's story in curriculums about empathy. Animal welfare protests erupted in states with outdated euthanasia policies. Buddy was awarded Canine Hero of the Year posthumously. David was invited to speak at the United Nations about humane care practices. But none of that mattered more than what he did next. Standing before 50 volunteers in the Buddy House, David spoke quietly. "We may not save every dog, but we can make sure they know what it means to be chosen. We can give them steak dinners, mountain views, warm laps, and songs to fall asleep to. We can carry them, like I carried Buddy, and we'll keep walking until the last dog gets their last walk." The room erupted in applause, and somewhere, in that breeze that swept through the open window, the wind howled softly. Leo had always been the silent type. He liked observing life through a lens, close, enough to see every detail, far enough to remain unseen. He was there when Buddy took his final steps. He was there when Grace licked David's hand the first time. He filmed Charlie's trembling legs as they stood for the first time in a week. But Leo was more than a cameraman now. He had become the storyteller of the forgotten. David called him our silent poet. But what no one knew was that Leo had his own story, one he never told anyone, until now. Before the foundation, before Buddy, before the camera, Leo had grown up in the foster system. He was left at a shelter, too. Not an animal shelter, but the kind for children whose parents disappear and don't leave a note. He remembered the cold linoleum floors, the sound of someone else crying through a shared wall, the smell of bleach and canned ravioli. But most of all, he remembered a dog, a mutt named Rusty, who lived behind the center. No one claimed him. He wandered the grounds, stealing hot dogs and curling up under the porch during storms. Leo would sneak food to him through the fence. They'd sit for hours just watching the sky. Then one day, Rusty didn't come back. They said he ran off, Leo once told David. But I think they put him down. That was the last time Leo cried, until Buddy.Leo launched a YouTube series titled Last Walks, Stories of Dogs You Should Have Known. Each episode focused on a single dog from the Buddy house, Marigold, the blind beagle who followed piano music Jax, the three-legged pit bull who loved babies Clementine, the poodle who wouldn't eat unless sung to Tank, the drooling bulldog who became a therapy dog at a hospice center. Leo didn't narrate them. He let the footage speak, soft close-ups, pauses, silence when words weren't needed. The camera lingered on the final looks, the last steps, the gentle farewells. He uploaded weekly. Each video ended with the same title card, Adopt the Old. They remember. The response was overwhelming. Millions watched, thousands donated, hundreds adopted. One day, Leo received a package. Inside was a bundle of drawings, letters, and a small USB stick. The letter on top read, Dear Mr. Leo, we are a third-grade class in Minnesota. We watch your dog videos every Friday. Some of us cried. Some of us hugged our pets tighter. One of us, Aiden, asked if he could adopt a grandpa dog instead of getting a puppy. We made a movie for you. We hope you like it. Love, Mrs. Peters. Class Leo played the video alone in his editing room. It was choppy, shot on an iPad with misspelled subtitles, but it featured a boy reading aloud. Old dogs are like old people. They have stories in their eyes. But if no one listens, they fade. Leo wept, then posted the video to the Foundation's page with the caption, You're never too young to choose compassion. Everyone had noticed how Leo never took a dog home. He loved them all, filmed them, sat with them in their final hours. But he never adopted, until Finnegan. Finnegan was a Basset Lab mix, 14 years old, curved spine, constant drool, and a snore that shook the walls. Nobody wanted Finnegan. He'd been returned twice, for chewing socks and barking at walls. David teased. Leo, he's perfect for you. Leo said nothing. But that night, he drove back to the shelter alone. When the staff arrived the next morning, Finnegan was gone. In his place was a note, taken, for life. Leo did something unexpected. He turned the camera around, for the first time ever, and filmed himself and Finnegan. Finnegan at the beach, Finnegan chasing squirrels and failing. Finnegan sleeping across Leo's editing keyboard. The series was titled Finnegan and Me. It wasn't polished, it was personal, and people loved it. Fans wrote comments like, I adopted my first senior because of you. I was going to give up until I saw Finnegan snoring through your live stream. Thank you for showing that love doesn't need to last long to be real. One winter morning, Leo posted a photo, an empty leash, captioned only. 12:37 a.m., he passed in my arms. Finnegan was gone. David found Leo the next day, walking the trails behind the Buddy house, leash still in hand, eyes red. I didn't know I could hurt this much, Leo whispered. David placed a hand on his shoulder. That means it was real. They buried Finnegan in the Sunset Garden with Buddy, Max, and the others. Leo placed a camera toy on the grave. Finnegan had loved chewing on it. At the next fundraiser gala, the team begged Leo to say something. He hated public speaking, but he agreed. Standing at the podium, he looked out over hundreds of supporters, people dressed in tuxedos and gowns, wiping away tears. He took a deep breath. I grew up in places where no one said, I love you, without a catch, where trust came with conditions. But then I met dogs who had been abused, abandoned, thrown out, and still wagged their tails at strangers, dogs who only had days left and spent them giving kisses. They taught me how to be brave, how to say goodbye. Finnegan taught me what forever means, even if it only lasts 10 months. The room rose in a standing ovation. Leo stepped down, eyes full. Leo spent the next 6 months making a full-length documentary. Title, Old Dogs, New Hearts. It chronicled the journey from Buddy to Grace, the transformation of Greenfield into the Buddy House, the lives and deaths of 24 hospice dogs, the ripple effect across shelters, schools, hospitals, and homes. It debuted at Sundance Film Festival. Won Best Documentary. Netflix offered to distribute it globally. Leo agreed, but only on one condition. Every view must donate $1 to a shelter of their choice, automatically. They said yes. Within 2 weeks, over $50 million was raised. On the anniversary of Finnegan's passing, Leo did one last thing. He returned to the place where he grew up, the foster center. It was abandoned now, windows boarded, graffiti on the walls. But, behind the building, he found the spot under the porch where Rusty used to sleep. He placed a plaque there. For Rusty, you were my first friend, I didn't forget. Then he turned on his camera, filmed the plaque, and uploaded it without narration, just ambient wind. The video was called Full Circle. Grace had been the symbol of hope from the very start, a dog who, against all odds, clawed her way back from the edge, yet now she was slowing down. Her joints stiffened. The medication that once brought her energy seemed to lose its magic. David watched her carefully every day. Her eyes, once bright and playful, now held a distant softness. Like Vet warned, she may not make it through the winter, but David refused to accept that. One chilly autumn afternoon, the doorbell rang. Standing there was a woman with silver hair and kind eyes. She introduced herself as Dr. Helena Graves, a holistic veterinarian who had heard of Buddy's last walk, foundation, and its work. She offered to help, not with drugs or surgeries, but with natural remedies and gentle therapies that focused on the whole dog. David was skeptical but hopeful. He invited her to meet. Grace, Dr. Graves, spent the next week visiting Grace daily. She used techniques that David had never seen before: acupuncture, herbal infusions, light therapy. Grace was calm with her, as if sensing a deep understanding. The team watched, amazed as Grace began to stir. She stretched more, wagged her tail, and even tried to stand without assistance. Word spread fast. The story of Grace's revival inspired the community. Local schools organized fundraisers, businesses donated supplies, volunteers came from neighboring towns, eager to learn from Dr. Graves and help with the care. The Buddy House became more than a shelter. It became a center of healing. One crisp morning, David took Grace outside. The ground was soft with fallen leaves. He clipped on her leash. With cautious steps, she moved forward, her eyes locked with his, full of trust and wonder. A tear slid down David's cheek. The camera caught every moment as Grace walked slowly but steadily, a small miracle unfolding. Despite the progress, Dr. Graves detected something alarming. Grace's heart murmured, irregular and faint. They rushed her to the vet. Tests revealed early-stage heart disease, a battle that would limit her time. But this diagnosis came with a choice. David sat beside her, holding her paw. "I can't promise you forever," he said softly. "But I promise you every moment I have." Grace licked his hand. A silent vow exchanged. Grace's transformation inspired a new program called Grace's Promise. It focused on senior dogs with chronic illnesses. The foundation hired nurses and therapists to provide palliative care. Special area was created with heated beds and constant companionship. Grace became the program's mascot. As Grace thrived, more dogs joined the program. One was Milo, a scruffy terrier with cataracts. Another was Bella, a shepherd mix with arthritis. Together they formed a little family, a patchwork of survivors. David watched as Grace led the pack with gentle authority. One afternoon, a man arrived at the Buddy house. He introduced himself as Mark, a scientist researching canine aging. He wanted to collaborate on a study using Grace and the Promise Program dogs. David agreed. Together they began a new chapter, one blending science and compassion. Months passed. Grace's health fluctuated. One evening, she gathered the team in the garden. She lay on the grass, head resting on David's lap. She looked at each person, David, Catherine, Leo, Dr. Graves, then closed her eyes. The air was still, a breeze whispered through the leaves. Grace was gone, but her legacy lived on. After Grace's passing, David felt a calling that stretched beyond the shelter's fences. He realized the healing power of dogs wasn't just for other dogs, it was for people too. With Leo's help, the foundation launched a new initiative, Healing Paws. This program paired hospice dogs with patients in hospitals and care centers, offering comfort to the sick and lonely. David met with the director of Greenfield Medical Center, who was eager to collaborate. The hospital's pediatric ward had many children with chronic illnesses who could benefit from animal therapy. Training began. Dogs learned how to be gentle around fragile patients. Volunteers learned how to manage schedules and hygiene protocols. Max was a Basset Hound mix, previously abandoned and then rescued by the foundation. His droopy eyes and slow gait masked a spirit that was fiercely loyal. Max had been part of the hospice program but had never visited a hospital before. On Max's first hospital visit, he was nervous. The sterile smell, the bright lights, the unfamiliar sounds. Everything was different. But when Max entered the pediatric ward, a little girl named Emily reached out. She was 8, battling leukemia, and had been withdrawn for days. Max sat beside her bed. She gently stroked his ears. The bond was instant. Emily's parents noticed a change. She smiled more, asked questions, even slept better. Doctors were amazed. Max's presence seemed to ease pain and anxiety. Leo filmed these visits, capturing moments of pure connection. Footage of Max licking Emily's hand, children laughing as dogs rolled on the floor, nurses wiping tears of joy. He titled the video, Paws of Hope. It went viral. Scientists joined the foundation's work. Studies showed animal therapy lowered stress hormones, reduced heart rates, and improved mood. Hospitals across the country started asking for Healing Paws partnerships. One day, Max sensed something was wrong. A young boy in ICU was struggling to breathe. Max nudged a nurse, drawing attention to the boy's distress. Medical staff acted quickly. The boy was stabilized. Everyone called Max a hero. Meanwhile, David received a letter from a woman named Anna. She had once adopted a dog from the shelter, a shy terrier named Toby. After Toby's death, Anna had become a volunteer. She told David about the profound impact dogs had on her recovery from depression. The letter ended with an invitation. Come visit our support group. We call it the Buddy Circle. The Buddy Circle was a gathering of people healed by dogs, patients, volunteers, adopters. They shared stories, tears, laughter. David found solace in their company. David envisioned expanding Healing Paws, hospices, nursing homes, schools for children with disabilities. Buddy House wasn't just a shelter anymore. It was a beacon. Leo began filming a documentary about Healing Paws. He interviewed doctors, patients, volunteers. He captured dogs like Max becoming symbols of hope. At the Foundation's annual gala, David revealed a surprise. A new building was being constructed next to Buddy House. It would be the Healing Paws Center, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to training therapy dogs and coordinating hospital visits. The Healing Paws Center was finally complete. With cutting-edge facilities, Training rooms, therapy spaces, and comfortable dog accommodations, it was a dream realized. David felt a deep sense of fulfillment. What began with one dying dog had grown into a movement touching countless lives. A special room inside the center was dedicated to Grace. Walls adorned with photos, paw prints, and letters from those she had inspired. Visitors often paused here to reflect on her journey. Grace was more than a dog. She was the heart of the foundation. David organized an open house. Families, volunteers, doctors, and media came from far and wide. Children laughed as therapy dogs played nearby. Stories of healing were shared openly. David took the stage, his voice steady but emotional. When I found Grace, she was at death's door. But she taught me that every life, no matter how fragile, has value. She showed us the power of love, of compassion, and the miracles that come when we refuse to give up. This center is for her, and for all the dogs and people who deserve hope and healing. The premiere of Leo's documentary, From Shelter to Healing, was held the same night. The film captured the Foundation's journey, Grace's story, and the powerful bond between humans and dogs. Tears, laughter, and applause filled the room. David knew this was just the start. The Healing Paws program was expanding nationally. Research partnerships flourished. Volunteer numbers skyrocketed. Among the guests was Anna, from the Buddy Circle. She brought Toby's picture and a heartfelt gift. The two shared stories and laughter. It was a reunion of souls bound by love and purpose. David watched Max gently comfort a child. He thought of Grace. How one fragile dog had sparked this unstoppable force. His phone buzzed. Another shelter requesting help. Another dog waiting for a second chance. That night, as the center quieted, David sat alone for a moment. He opened a small box, a collar worn by Grace, faded, but treasured. He smiled softly. "Thank you, Grace, for everything."